Okay, so it's 5:15. We'll start the debate. Hi, my name is Ji-Sung Jang. I'll be chairing this round with Sonoo Kwak, Mika, Kim Ji-hyun, Choi Jae-hyun, Song Jae-ho, and Go Jae-won. And welcome to the grand finals of 2020 Kydc Elementary School Division. I'd like to congratulate all teams that made it this far. So on government, we have Team Queens, and on opposition, we have Team Miracle. So, under the motion then, this house would require children to take care of their parents when they reach adulthood. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome the Prime Minister to start the debate. Here.
May I start?
Yep.
Mr. Madam Speaker, we think that according to OECD, Korea has the highest suicide rate for these sort of elderly in the first place. We think that this already shows that there's a lack of emotional support that exists within the status quo right now. Moreover, we think that these elderly are one of the biggest part of society and the biggest population, and that will only increase further. In that point, we think that the government needs to solve this problem, and we think that the only capable actor and the most effective actor that can do this is the children in the first place. So before going on to our first two arguments, firstly, why is it justified? Secondly, why is it beneficial and going to lead to the increased productive members of society? We're going to provide you with two main parameters of this debate. Firstly, for poor families who don't have enough financial debt, we're going to provide them with money. We're going to provide them with welfare. Secondly, we think that if this is a cause of negligence or child abuse, we think that is crime. Moreover, we think that should be neglected from the debate as a whole, primarily because that is crime in the first place. And moreover, we think in these sort of cases, children do not have a responsibility. Moving on to our first argument, why is it justified? We're going to provide you with four main levels of analysis. Firstly, we're going to explain to you the characteristics of the status quo. Secondly, we're going to explain to you why the children have a responsibility to the parents. Thirdly, why children are the most effective entity. And fourthly, why the children also have a responsibility for the society. Firstly, about the characteristics of the status quo. Mr. Madam Speaker, we think that firstly, there's an extreme lack of sustainability within the relationship. Moreover, we think that the ignorance between these sort of child and parents are growing more and more. But secondly, we think that one of the most ideal problem with this is that both of the individuals don't have any motivation to try to solve this problem, primarily because they believe it's going to be much better if they don't do this in the first place. We think that this is a case in which, because of a certain conflict that happened within the past, that their relationship constantly has been increasing in the first place. However, we think that to solve this problem, that there needs to be ideal conversation. Moving into a second level of analysis, why children have a responsibility to these parents. Mr. Madam Speaker, we think that the main reason that these children were able to reach adulthood in an extremely fine stage, have a bed and proper training was thanks to the parents and thanks to the fact that they had a roof over their head, Mr. Madam Speaker. We think that at the end of the day, parents have sacrificed a lot of values, extreme jobs, or extreme things that they necessarily want to do within the society. And because even right now in the status quo, they're extremely low baby birth rate in the status quo, we think that moreover, children have a responsibility for their parents and a responsibility to help them, primarily because they can't just ignore them for the first place. But thirdly, then at that point, why are the children the most effective entity? Mr. Madam Speaker, we think that one of the main problems that there are with elderly, and one of the main problems, firstly, we think that financial support is not that much, primarily because we think the government already provides them with jobs, provides them with money when they're older. We think that one of the main missing criteria is the fact that they need emotional support, Mr. Madam Speaker. We think that form of emotional support can only be provided by the children, primarily because firstly, they have seen that children from an extremely long time. Secondly, from the conflicts and the good times, and also the creation they have, that's the point in which there's going to be development within the relation. But thirdly, Mr. Madam Speaker, we think that because these individuals have seen their child grow in the first place, that is also going to lead to emotional attachment in the first place. And because they have clearly showed you that firstly, why children have a responsibility toward the parents, primarily because he can't suddenly ignore the values that they were provided with in the first place. And because he proved to you, the only main way to actually solve this problem is to provide emotional support. And the main capable actor that can do that is these children. We'd like to go to our second argument. Moving on to our second argument about why is it beneficial. Mr. Madam Speaker, we think that the only way to solve a problem in which there's a conflict, because we have proved to you, by within the status quo individuals right now, they just try to ignore each other at the fast pace. We think that the best way we can solve this problem is by having communication, Mr. Madam Speaker, because communication can lead to talking to each other, talking about the problems, talking about the misconcept that has necessarily happened. Moreover, we think that we're much more responsible than the opposition team, because we're at least providing them an opportunity in which they can actually solve their problems, Mr. Madam Speaker. But from the point in which their problems is going to get solved by communication, that's the point, and there's going to be more productive members of society. That's the point where individuals are going to understand each other, and that's the point in which there's going to be a better relationship that is developed in the first place, which is actually going to be better for society and also for the individuals themselves. And because of this, it's extremely proud to propose. Thank you.
Hear, hear. Mr. and Madam Speakers, we believe that in the current status quo, the problem is that these children, in the government case, the problem is that these children do not have actual responsibility over their parents, and moreover, it's actually the government's responsibility to take care of their parents, which is why we clearly oppose the motion. Now, I'd like to straightly move on to rebuttals of the government team. So, the first argument is fully the first argument and the policy. They said that they never actually clearly defined what the definition of taking care of their parents will be, and so we believe that if they did not actually clearly define this, then we believe that the government's whole case fails, because then these children will not. It depends on how much the children actually take care of their own parents, and we believe that if the government does not actually provide any definition, the whole case fails. And now the first argument is going to be rebutted by our team's first and second arguments. And the second argument was about how communication is so important, and how we believe that communication cannot solve anything, and the government does not know if communication is going to solve certain cases. And actually, moving on to team's policy. And we have, so our team's policy is that the government is going to increase silver care for their parents. So firstly, we're going to increase economic support. And secondly, if they do not have any proper quality houses, then we're going to provide shelter for these parents. And thirdly, we're going to increase actually healthcare and provide more healthcare for these parents. Now, certainly moving on to our team's first argument, which is about how it is unjustified for these children to take care of their parents. And I have two levels of analysis. Firstly, about why it's not the children's responsibility. And I have three main reasons for this. Firstly, it's because the parents giving love and care to the children is something natural when they decide to have a child. So when these parents decide to have a child, we believe that they have promised the government through a social contract to give a productive member of society, and to give love and care to these parents, these children, is actually naturally provided. And second reason is because no parent actually calculates about the monetary benefit that a child will provide when they decide to have a child. So we believe that no parent actually says, oh, if I take care of this child will feel guilty when they grow up, and so I'll have so many future compensation and benefit, which is why I'll have a child. We believe that in the current status quo, no parent actually thinks about this, and so the reason why they give care and protection to the child is because they love that child, and because they feel so attached to this child, and they love it, and they want to care for them. And so therefore, calculating monetary benefit that the child gives goes against the proper values that a responsible parent should have. However, in the government team's case, these children will turn into these people who are made to support these parents, and it actually sends a bad social message that these children will provide me profit. And so therefore, the government case actually provides a bad mindset that the parents will get, which is extremely immoral. And the third reason is because the freedom is a right that the government provides to and promises to the children. So when these children were under the care of their parents, many of their rights were not fully responded by the government. So it is because the government promised the children to give these rights and to choose their own life once they actually become adults. So which is why the parents were given more rights to take care of their children when these children were actually young. However, now since these children have turned into adults, we believe that the government should actually give them the choice to choose their own life. However, we believe that the government forcing these children to help their parents is not letting these children actually choose their own life, which is why it is not the children's responsibility to take care of their parents. Now, second, a level analysis of why it's actually the government's role. So these parents, they pay the tax, they follow the laws, and they solve the problem of low birth rate, and they actually gave a productive member of society, and we believe that they gave many benefits to end the responsibilities and solve the responsibilities to the government. And so we believe the government should promise them to provide silver care, which is why our policy stands. Now, certainly moving on to team's second argument, which is about why it gives many harms to children. And maybe there are two types of children. Firstly, about the general people, so the majority. So when the motion says that motion clearly states when they go into adulthood. So we believe that these children have just stepped into society, and they need to get a part-time job or at least a job, and we believe that they need money and time for their own personal needs. However, the government forcing the children to help their parents is an immense burden for these children because they cannot focus more on the important things of their own life, such as their job or their own family. Now, second, the second type of people is about the poor children. So maybe they especially have less money and time to actually provide themselves. However, if they need to work at least another hour to actually make sure that I can feed myself and I can pay my own rent. However, the government forcing them to take care of their parents essentially means that the government is forcing these children to actually forget about their own life and only care about their parents. Which is why in conclusion, the children does not have any responsibility. The government has, and the motion provides immense burden to the children, which is why I'm very proud to oppose.
May I start?
Yep.
So, Mr. and Madam Speaker, today before I go on to my rebuttals, I would like to point out rebuttals and my argument. I would like to prove one thing. So, before the first speaker even started their arguments, we think that they had a crucial flaw, which was that they did not properly rebut to our first speaker's argument. And she actually said a very important point in her argument was about which was about how children are the most effective identities in this motion, and that's why they also have the responsibility. And she also explained even more about why children also have responsibility and how children have been connected with their parents for a long time, and that's why they're the best individuals to actually emotionally support them, which they did not rebut to, which we think that is very problematic from their side. Now, moving on to my rebuttals, their first argument was about how it's not parents' role to think. Parents should not be thinking about like the monetary compensation that they are getting from children, and this sends a bad social message. It's government's duty or whatnot. Well, Mr. and Madam Speaker, we also agree. We think that parents should not be focused on the monetary value for children, and that's why our first speaker already clearly explained in our argument that they supposedly did not listen to about how these parents now need emotional support from their children, because even if government already provides like infrastructure, tax benefits to these elderly or etc., what these elderly actually need is comfort from their isolation that they have right now, and that's why they need emotional support from their children. And they also rebutted our first argument with this, which I would like to give the same explanation to. The second argument was about how this is going to give furthermore burden for these children, and about how this will also harm these poor people. Well, Mr. and Madam Speaker, firstly about the poor people point, we think that actually our first speaker already clearly said in our policy that we will provide more welfare for poor families so that they can provide for each other. A second level of response, we think that actually these poor people need financial support on both sides, and they also need emotional support from children, and that's because poor not only have not enough money, but they also have less interaction as well, because they don't have enough time. They didn't have enough time to interact with other people or really form bonds, because they were working so hard, working their backs out to provide for their children. And that's why we also not only provide monetary benefits but also emotional benefits on our side. They talked about how this is a burden for these children. Well, Mr. Speaker, we actually think that these children need to take this burden because parents took an even bigger burden when they decided to have their child. For example, they provided their bed, they provided their home, they provided for them every single day of their life. And are we requiring this? No, we're just saying that even a frequent visit of like once a week is enough, because these parents don't require as much. And saying that these children can't do this is irresponsible. But second level of response, we think that actually if they require the entire society to manage the elderly, then we think that they will fail. For example, in the case in Greece, as we have already seen in society, and they rebutted our second argument by saying that communication doesn't solve everything. Well, Mr. Speaker, we think that this is not true, because this usually can happen. But even if communication doesn't solve all the problems, we think that it does in this motion's case, because they need emotional support. Moving on to our team's final argument about how this creates a better society with harmony. So we think that actually we are able to break down barriers between elderly and these children because even if I did not like my parents in the past, or whether I did or not, because now we are able to meet again, we reunite and we talk, then we are able to form better bonds in this situation. So that's why I will be more incentivized to not stereotype older people, even if it's just for the sake of my poor mom and dad that they love. And I will not call them things like, for example, punte that we do in society, which we think is also very disrespectful. And that's why when these relationships also individually improve, then society as a whole will now start to be able to appreciate these people more. Like, oh, my mom really did sacrifice for me, then I'm pretty sure that person also probably did sacrifice for their children. When this appreciation and accepting of each other happens in society, we think that of course there is able to be more harmony because we accept each other. And that's why when we have more harmony, then we're able to improve the quality of society with less problems. And that's why today I am so proud to propose the motion. Thank you for listening.
Yep.
So, Mr. and Madam Speaker, before I go on to our team SAS argument, which is about better relationship between the children and the parents, let me surely go on to our rebuttals for the previous two speakers of the government team. So, firstly, Mr. Speaker, I would like to rebut to their policy about how they're going to exempt the abused people in the society. So, Mr. Speaker, when children will abuse in the policy, in this case, Mr. and Madam Speaker, children will just say that even though you're just tiger parented in the society, I'll just say that I'm going to be abused just to be exempt from these responsibility that the other team is saying. B, Mr. Speaker, in the current status quo, the children who are abused is not known well just because they think that they're just a family of themselves. In this case, Mr. Madam Speaker, the children do not want the government to know that the parents abuse them. In this case, Mr. Madam Speaker, what the government team is doing is just forcing these children to go with the parents and be traumatized again. Now let me straightly go with my second rebuttal. My second rebuttal is about their second policy, how in the case of poor, they're going to give financial support for these poor. So, Mr. Speaker, we believe that what they're saying, we're not only talking about the financial and the money and the things that they provide to their parents, so such things like a bed, a good home. What we're saying is that the time and the effort, no thank you, time and the effort that the poor need to provide to their parents. So, Mr. Madam Speaker, we believe that the time and the effort that the poor provide is a really, really big thing, because of these 1 minute and 1 hour that the poor spend for working is going to be lost. In this case, Mr. Madam Speaker, the poor cannot even have a financial life, which is the most important thing in the status quo. Now let me straightly go on to my third rebuttal about compensation of parents. So the other team's first argument said that they should compensate to their parents. So Mr. Speaker, we believe that these children have more freedom to choose to go to their parents, because that the parents did not lay them just for compensation for them. And B, Mr. Speaker, if they assume that the parents lay these students for compensation, then it is just a bad parent. And in this case, we should not compensate them because that they are so bad parents. Now, see, Mr. Speaker, if the parents did really, really well, then these children will naturally compensate these parents because that they feel very, very thankful. In this case, Mr. Madam Speaker, the government has to know is to incentivize and regulate these things. No, thank you. See, Mr. Speaker, if they did not give what the other team is only giving an example of when the parents give good care for the students, but there are some cases when the parents cannot give good care, and in this case, Mr. Madam Speaker, we believe that these children should not have the responsibility to compensate. For an example, if the parents do not give enough love and enough financial support because that they're so poor, in this case, Mr. Madam Speaker, they do not have the responsibility, no thank you, to provide compensation for their parents. Mr. Speaker, if it becomes the logic of forcement of these children, then this is not a compensation. It's just making children a tool that they should create and create these parents a stable life in the future. Now let me straightly go with my first rebuttal about the most effective factor. So the other team said that the children were the most effective factor, and so that they have the responsibility. Mr. Speaker, just because that they can do this work the best, they do not have the responsibility. For example, if I can build this apartment the best, then it doesn't mean that I have the responsibility to go and build all the apartments. Mr. Madam Speaker, the other team had the wrong problem solution mismatch. So let me straightly go with my first rebuttal about the better relationship, and about their last argument, which is about they break up the barrier because that they have a better relationship. So Mr. Speaker, the problem of these parents and the children didn't have solved for the 20 past years. In this case, Mr. Madam Speaker, just making them have together and making them to communicate would just solve the problem really. If this problem is not solved for the past 20 years, we think that the other team is making a ridiculous point. Mr. Speaker, we think that why the other team saying this, they agree to the point that some students have bad relationship and might be uncomfortable when meeting their parents. In this case, Mr. Madam Speaker, what the other team did is just supporting our side, and which gives an immense benefit to our side. Now let me surely go into our team's last argument about better relationship between parents and students. So I have 3 levels of analysis. Mr. Speaker, in the case of ordinary children, so even though my relationship between my parents are not that bad, and if I feel that I'm getting forced to provide love for my parents just because that the government are forcing me, and I feel stressed and I do not want to do it and I feel pressure for it, then also it creates a bad relationship between the parents and the students. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, in the case of traumatized students, so if I'm a highly tiger parenting and emotionally uncomfortable with my parents, and I'm forced to go to see my parents, I'll do nothing but sit there and think about my trauma. And Mr. Madam Speaker, this will be scared and try to make me not to talk with them, which also creates a bad relationship between the parents and the children. So thirdly, Mr. Speaker, why bad relationship between the parents and children is an awful thing. So A is because that they cannot have emotional support for both of the stakeholders, and B because that it creates hate mind for each other, and C because it causes worse relationship between each other, and which the both team wants to create a better relationship between the parents and children. And because that we want all these points, we believe that our team clearly have taken this fate.
Here,
Can I start?
Yep.
Mr. Madam Speaker, before I got into the 2 classes that I found out this video, first I rebut a very nonsense point that the previous speaker has made. So the previous speaker talked about how these children that actually that their parents actually do tiger parenting onto them, they will actually try to say that they're abused because they want to get away from these kind of taking care of their parents. But Mr. Madam Speaker, does this even make any sense in today's debate? We think that it actually takes more time for these parents, for these children to actually prove that they're abused when they were actually just being tiger parented. We think this will actually just take more time. We think that these people will actually just rather just care for their parents because they have to just visit them once a week, and also just becomes their emotional support at the first place, Mr. Madam Speaker. Also, we think that because the government actually has a lot of checks and balances, it is going to be very hard for them to actually prove that they're abused and violently abused at the first place, Mr. Madam Speaker. So now I'd like to directly move on to my first principal clash about whether it is justified. So they talked about how it is not the children's responsibility. Firstly, they talked about how providing loving care is natural for these parents. Well, Mr. Madam Speaker, we think that this is actually not natural. Maybe your parents could have just provided with you with sufficient food or clothes or bed or just for your survival. We think that this is actually, that is why these kind of sufficient loving care, in order for it to become productive members in the society, and also in order for you to create a very good identity, we think this is actually not natural in the first place. Also secondly, they talked about how the children did not choose their own life. Yes, Mr. Madam Speaker, they did not choose it, but it turns out that these children are fortunately living and can blink their eyes and can breathe. We'd like to ask a question to you. Would you like it if you didn't even have consciousness and couldn't even practice all the rights that you're enjoying the status quo? Even though these children did not choose to actually be born, because they're provided with a lot of benefits by their birth, that is why these children actually have the obligation at the first place. And also, I'd like to actually clarify the point that they're not recognize the status quo. We think that in the status quo, Korea actually has the highest suicide rate among all of the OECD countries of elderly people. This is because we think that even in the status quo, they actually have sufficient economical support, and we think that the government can provide them with more economical support for these elderly people. We think that this can actually be fulfilled by the government in both sides. However, the reason why these elderly actually have more incentives to suicide in the status quo is because they don't have enough emotional support and presence next to them. They can actually talk about their problems and also become friends with them at the first place, Mr. Madam Speaker, because of the fact that these elderly, for example, have less friends than other kind of generation people. We think that it was their responsibility and their burden to actually solve this problem. However, they're not even putting in any effort in trying to solve this kind of very extreme and difficult problem that status quo. And Mr. Madam Speaker, I'd like to emphasize to you that even though in our worst case, where our policy won't even work, we think we're actually still much better because we're actually still trying to fulfill our responsibility in trying to protect these elderly people in the status quo. And that is why we actually take the upper end to today's debate. And they talked about how just because these children are the best entity, they should not do it. But Mr. Madam Speaker, we think that even though they're yes, they are the best entity, but however, we think they're actually the only best entity in today's debate. We think there is the only entity that can actually take care of their parents and also care of their parents because firstly, it is their responsibility. Also, secondly, they best know their parents because they have seen them for the whole life. We think that is why we actually clearly take the first clash in today's debate. Now, today, I really move on to my second clash about the practical harms and benefits. So they talked about how these children that are traumatized by tiger parents, if they actually meet their parents, and then they're going to actually worsen the relationship. But we think that the reason why these people actually believe that their problem cannot be solved, even though they meet and have communication, is because of the fact that they actually believe that not meeting and not even having communication and living in different countries is the best way for them. Because it's actually not the clear best way for them. We think that if they actually have the opportunity and the motivation to meet together, this is actually, because our team is providing these kind of opportunities in the first place, this is actually going to become more beneficial to actually solve the problems. And also, we think that even though they actually still just go to home and just give them dinner and not even talk about anything, there's still the unconsciousness and also still the fact itself that they're in the same house and in the same room. This itself is actually going to still increase the relationship in today's debate. And they talked about how these poor people cannot have their financial life. But firstly, we think that our policy has clearly explained to you that we're going to provide welfare for these poor people. Also, secondly, we think that the poor people are the ones that actually need more financial support, more emotional support from their children. We think that these poor people actually has less interaction with the society because they're working a lot in factories or whatnot. And we think that this actually means that they have less friends and also less support from the society, which means that they're actually more lonely, right? We think that is why these are the stakeholders that actually need these kind of emotional support, because in both sides we can actually have financial support. We think that is why our team can actually provide better benefits for these poor people and also to the whole society. So that is why we're very proud to stand on Team Government on today's motion. Thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
So, Mr. Speaker, I told that in today's debate, the government is being very irresponsible and just sacrificing all the rights that these children should be able to have been able to receive in the first place. But even though they have been regulating their whole rights, actually their whole complete freedom to actually do it, where even the child before the build of the age of 19 too. But now these children actually just have to have the freedom, they're actually not in the right age to actually achieve their own freedom, to actually act on whatever they want. But now these governments are just actually cutting out the whole stuff of these children, that the children and their rights to actually act in the way they whatever they want, and just sacrificing all their benefits too. And now without further ado, I want to go into two questions and explain firstly about why the goods that the parents have provided them is actually not a responsibility to pay back, and secondly about how the emotional support that these elderly should get will not be very exclusive benefits in their teen sides. So first question about why this goes and the benefit that the government and parents are providing to them is actually a responsibility. So Mr. Checker, I think that just because the parents actually had given the benefits that they have said that does not mean that the child should actually be able to compensate for them. Why? Because it's actually a responsibility that these parents are providing. No, thank you. Not something that was genuinely present to the children, Mr. Speaker. These kind of benefits that these parents have given for the child in the childhood was something a responsibility and something the government actually has to have a social contract with the parents to do for them. So Mr. Speaker, since our first speaker actually explained very details about how these government, no thank you, how these parents actually had a social contract with the government to take responsibility of the life that I have chosen to get, and also grow them properly as a productive member, actually grow them properly as a productive member of society. So Mr. Speaker, just because they are able to give them basic necessity and just basic care for nothing, just care for their children, does not mean that we should be able to be so gratified for this. Why? Because this is a sacrifice. Actually, this is a benefit that these should be required for these parents, because there's a responsibility that any child should be paying for. Any parents should be paying for the child. And Mr. Speaker, secondly, even if we actually just assume that the parent responsibility does not stand for these child, argument still believes that it's actually against the purpose of these parents in the first place. So Mr. Since the argument also to previous speakers actually explained very detailed about how these parents do not have the responsibility and actually do not actually have the purpose to actually just do the benefit and actually love their child just for a compensation in the first place. Mr. The reason why these parents actually given them support and actually love and unconditional love and care for these parents' children was just because I love this child so much and I love this child in front of my eyes so much and actually care for this child's future so much that I give them actually medical benefits to them. Mr. They're actually saying that they agree to this point. Mr. They're actually just agree to the point. Thank you. Which I think that actually completely ignores about these parents' true identity and parents' true motivation, true incentive to actually care for their child about the most stakeholder too. But Mr. Check, and also since because I think I've been able to explain to you, thank you, why these parents do not have the responsibility to actually pay back the parents' children do not have the responsibility to pay back the child, pay back with their parents, because it was actually a responsibility that they should be able to do. But since
engagement.
No, thank you. And now let me talk about the second question, actually, why these emotional support that these elderly will not be able to get achieved very exclusively at their teaching sites. So Mr. Speaker, now I want to divide the stakeholder into three kinds of debates, and three kinds of stakeholders in today's debate, which is firstly about the stakeholders that are normal people who actually feel gratitude and feel love towards their both parents and the children, and the second stakeholder about the poor people, and thirdly about the traumatized stakeholders. So Mr. Speaker, I know that these first stakeholders are actually not a benefit or harm at all in both teen sites, because Mr. Speaker, people who actually feel thankful about their parents will naturally just go and visit them and give a lot of unconditional emotional support to their parents. So Mr. Speaker, I know that this stakeholder is actually the most actually will be the ones who are the most beneficial, because the parents will still be able to achieve a very important emotional support in their teen sites, in our teen sites too. And the second level stakeholders are the poor people. So Mr. Speaker, I think that the interactions and what the author actually discovered how these interactions are very low for the poor, and these poor are very unconditionally actually able to survive in society very much, actually stands exactly the same for these poor children too. Mr. Speaker, these poor are actually burdened to just enough the task of sustaining themselves and their family enough too. But now they're actually forced to go to their parents, actually pay a lot of time, actually a lot of amount of compensation for their parents, which is not right at all. Mr. Speaker, and also even if these poor people might not be able to go to parents, we still have protection for these parents. We still have protection for these elderly parents too, because we'll be giving them actually silver house care too. And the third level stakeholder, which are the people, the children who are traumatized. Well, Mr. Speaker, if these children actually are forced to go to my parents' house, which are parenting me, actually, which is burdening me and giving them really stressful words in my childhood, then they're going to be forever reminded of my trauma, actually to forever remind of my trauma and just feel traumatized when they just face my parents. But I know that these kind of harms cannot be solved just by communication, because they're just because communication cannot solve these really big gaps that cannot be solved, that happen for these child emotional supports. So even though they're things is just sacrificing all these children's rights just for benefit that writing can also achieve by silver care too. And now I'm going to propose that.
May I start?
Yep.
So, Mr. Madam Speaker, we believe that we had very irresponsible opposition team during this debate because they actually failed to prove us why children are the best factor, and why should they force parents to care their parents when they reach adulthood, and so we believe that they actually failed to clarify their principle in this debate, Mr. Madam Speaker. So we believe that in this debate we have to consider about is children's responsibility in case of taking care of their parents, and secondly comparison between practical harms and benefits. So we believe that this leads to our first question: is it justifiable to require children to take care of parents? So we believe that government team's value was all about supporting the responsibility of children and because parents take care of them, and we believe that children are the only factor for them. But compared to those factors, our value was that children are not responsible for those factors, and we believe that governments are responsible for those factors, and we believe that this will actually worsen the problem in status quo. So we believe that their value is actually secondary value because firstly, we clearly explained to you why children are not responsible in those cases. We believe that parental responsibility and children's responsibility is very different in this debate because parents are the basic responsibility to take care, and they promise to each other by government to take their parents when they actually had them, and we believe that they made choice for children when children are young. For example, they made choices for us and they made the rational acts for us, Mr. Madam Speaker. So we believe that in this case, parental responsibility and children's responsibility is very different. And actually, we believe that parents didn't have children simply because they want to reach the further benefit because of children's, Mr. Madam Speaker. And we believe that this is actually government's role to promote those cares for those parents because they actually contributed to society in many ways. And we believe that governments are providing the alternative in today's status quo. And secondly, we believe that compensation to parents. Firstly, we believe that freedom parents did not did it for the compensation, and B, even if we did it for compensation, we believe that it is a fault of bad parents, and C, we believe that if parents did well, those children will actually going to compensate back for those parents, and D, we believe that if we didn't have a good parent, we believe that there are no compensation existing in today's status quo. So we believe that those are the wrong point of the government team. And thirdly, we believe that in effectiveness they have no responsibility because that their most effective factor does not simply mean that they have to do this. And secondly, we believe that we proved to you why this will actually worsen the problem because the relationship between parents and children will get worse, Mr. Madam Speaker.
Here.
So we believe that in conclusion, government team failed to prove why children are the factors for the problems in status quo, and secondly, their practical benefits were not explained well. But we believe that in our cases, we proved why parents and children's factors are different from each other, and it is why not the children's responsibility for it. And we believe that practical benefit exists in our case. So we believe that our team clearly win this debate. Tom, thank you for listening.
May I start?
Yep.
So, Mr. and Madam Speaker, we clearly see that the opposition is just laying down and eating chips in this debate. When both teams actually agreed that the problem is extremely severe, we believe that the opposition's government is not doing anything at all. So our honorable three speakers have constantly pushed the burden that the opposition actually needs to provide a solution, but there was no single response. Even though we actually assume our worst case and assume that there will be no change whatsoever, we actually think that we still won this debate, primarily because the opposition side is just letting these elderly die because of lack of supply. Now let me go on to my speech, going on to my first point where I'll be briefly talking about the woeful poems throughout the debate. So firstly, the leader of opposition. We believe that the leader of opposition wasn't able to actually rebut back to big chunks that were highly important in this debate. For example, our honorable first speaker's first argument, we believe that argument was highly important in this debate, especially because it proved how the children are actually the best actor to give emotional support in whatsoever because firstly, these two actually have been together for a long time. Secondly, they actually have these moments that have attached them. And lastly, these parents have seen them, seen these children grow. We actually believe that, moreover, we believe that the opposition's whole team had actually no response to what our whole team explained important in this debate. So we actually believe that they were conceding to this explanation. And unlike the irresponsible team opposition, we believe that because our honorable team members have already proved how our world, team proposition world, actually makes a better society to live in, we believe that we remain responsible in this debate. So let me go on to my last point where I'll be going to do a world comparison. So, Mr. and Madam Speaker, at the end of the day, comparing both teams' world, we actually believe that team proposition makes a better world because we would be able to protect the elderly, but also help the relationship between these two, the children and the elderly parents. We believe that unlike responsible team proposition, we believe that team opposition is only prioritizing the children's right that are and also just abandoning the elderly that have actually took care of these children to come to the status quo. And we actually believe that they are irresponsible. So, Mr. and Madam Speaker, if we actually summarize the whole comparison that I've said, we believe that because team proposition can actually help both stakeholders, the children and the elderly parents, while irresponsible team opposition only prioritizes children who are already getting prioritized in the status quo. We believe that team proposition won this debate. Thank you.
That officially concludes this debate, the grand finals of Kydc 2020 winter. Yes, thank you for the debate. And so cross board, shake hands, and please go back to the